Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Founder Files. Today, I've got something nice and unique for you, and we're going to be chatting to an NPO for once. We've done for-profit organizations the entire time that we've been running this podcast. I thought we'd change it up and see what's scaling like for a non-profit organization. And this is why I've chosen Tracey Chambers from Taking Care of Business, who used to be called the Clothing Bank, because in my opinion, they're one of the most successful non-profit organizations in South Africa. And we're going to talk to you about that success a little bit later on, but just a fast forward, they do about 150 million rand worth of retail goods that come through their program every single year. Now, what we get into in this podcast, firstly, I couldn't help myself, had to talk to her about the philosophy of starting an NPO when becoming an entrepreneur leaving corporate, right? Why is it that you would go and start something where you're helping other people with their wealth creation, but with a model where you are not able to create wealth for yourself? So we tap into a lot of her personal motivation, what fulfills Tracey, what meaning means for her in entrepreneurship, and what she kind of gets out of this as a reward for her business, seeing that she's not going to be able to pass this down to her kids. It's a really fascinating, different perspective to remind us what is the point of what we're doing all of this for at the end of the day. We then get into the practicalities of really scaling this organization, what made it unique especially the starting point, and why she needed funding, and how they had to get to cash flow positive. Sounds very familiar to lots of the tech startups out there. We then start talking about how she set up her leadership team from the very beginning, how she was able to generate trust with them, the importance of systems as you're growing and scaling. We get practically in terms of how she was able to not only develop but continue the culture as they go into all these different locations, how she onboarded new leaders and made sure that they were properly trained and indoctrinated within this culture. And as always, much more in between in terms of some practical lessons, but also some great philosophies to shift some thinking. So if you are not already following the Founder Files, you're going to miss out on great stories like Tracey's now. So please make sure that you are liking, commenting, sharing, and following us now, because that's the best way to follow this podcast and the best way to make me happy. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, from me, Tracey Chambers. Welcome to the Founder Files, the podcast that's like eavesdropping on a conversation with a successful entrepreneur over a fireside chat. Join me, Cameron Coots, through this unique experience of unfiltered stories and insights from scaling founders around the globe as they share their ups, downs, and everything in between. Tracey, welcome to episode 101 of the Founder Files. I think it's an amazing time to kick off this second century of this podcast. But the first time, I'm actually going to be talking to someone who is the founder of a nonprofit organization. And I came to you deliberately because you've managed to scale your organization incredibly successfully about South Africa. And I can't wait to get into this and hear your unique story. So thank you for joining us on the show.
Great. Super. Cameron, thanks for having me.
So Tracey, talk to me just about Taking Care of Business as an organization. I mean, it used to be called the Clothing Bank. Just tell me how the business works and how the business model works. Even there, like I think when I describe an NPO, is it a business? I'm assuming it is. There's transactions and flows of money and capital. It's not a for-profit business. Makes me now philosophically question the whole like definition of a business. But yeah, can you just explain to me how it works?
Yeah, well, I think it is a non-profit in terms of the legal system, but it is best described as a social enterprise. And in South Africa, there just unfortunately isn't a legal entity for it to be classified as a social enterprise as it is, as it could be in other countries. We like to think of ourselves, I think also the word non-profit is a great debate. Recently, I followed a trail on LinkedIn, like, why do we call ourselves the non of what we are? The opposite of a for-profit. A non-profit is fundamentally different in terms of its thinking and its makeup and its culture, but we call ourselves the opposite of a for-profit. So should it be called an impact-first organization? I think we like to think of ourselves as an impact organization. I like to think of ourselves as an impact entrepreneur. So Taking Care of Business was founded in 2010, right in the middle of the year of the World Cup. And myself, I had previously worked for Woolworths. I'm a chartered accountant by profession. And I'd essentially had my midlife crisis at the age of 39. I was a mother.
There you go.
And really loved my job. I was head of financial planning and performance management at Woolworths. Absolutely loved my job. Had a great boss who was very supportive. But some inside me, I had this burning need to do something more impactful in the world, and particularly in South Africa. I wanted to use my privilege to build this country, to build, everybody in this country, and really, show people that they could create their own wealth. And I started doing that through doing some mentoring. And that's really where the idea of the clothing bank came from. So taking my retail experience within the retail supply chain, particularly within the fashion industry and the fast fashion industry, there is tons and tons of waste. Between 2 to 3% of retail sales is considered waste. So everything that you return to a retailer, you try it on in the change rooms, lipstick got on the t-shirt, a button fell off, or it shrunk in the wash, or at the end of a season, the flowery pants with the wide leg that were in fashion this season aren't going to be in fashion next season. So those goods become waste, and retailers really struggle with this. Retail stores are very small at the back. Retail space is very expensive, and they really don't have the systems to process the reverse logistics. So this was a problem that I saw in my finance capacity at Woolworths. This new desire of mine to really make a difference was, well, how could we use this excess in a way that really does make a difference? So internationally, they're charity shops. Those charity shops sell this excess, make money, and then go and donate that money to a worthy cause. We decided to shortcut that process. How can we use this waste directly in the South African economy? And so our model works primarily with unemployed mothers. In South Africa, 50% of South Africans have not completed grade 12. In order to pack shelves at your local Woolworths, you have to have a grade 12. Not because that's the competence that's needed, it's just there's so much unemployment, it's seen as a selection criteria. So really, you are, I don't want to use the word, you screwed in South Africa. If you do not have grade 12, what options are left to you? And sadly, the entrepreneurial spirit of this country was severed in apartheid. And that's because it was illegal to run a business. And so most entrepreneurs, if you talk to them, many of them grew up in entrepreneurial families. It's what they discussed around the dining room table. It's inherent in their DNA. And we're talking to individuals who've never ever considered self-employment, let alone entrepreneurship. So that was really the spark of the idea. How do we take excess product that is highly valuable, somebody's waste is somebody else's gold, and marry this with the pool of individuals who are really at a dead end economically and really are totally dependent on the state for a meager grant to feed and house their family. And how do we actually ignite the entrepreneurial spirit of this country, starting at the first rung of the ladder, getting somebody actually considering being self-employed versus actually going down that deadbeat road of looking for a job that is going to be, if they're lucky to find one, is going to be a minimum wage job, and their chances of creating wealth in their family are unlikely. And so we put those two together. So our first founding project was called the Clothing Bank, where we partner with all of South Africa's major retailers. They donate excess product to us, so in the region of 2 million items a year, worth about 150 million rand at retail cost. We bring those into large facilities. We have 4 facilities around the country. We then recruit unemployed mothers into our old Clothing Bank program, which is now called Resell, and we bring them into a 2-year development program with them trading within the first 2 weeks. And everybody says, why 2 years? Well, there's so much deep work that we need to do that is related to intergenerational poverty, trauma, and so much more, let alone the business skills that we teach her. And so over 2 years, this woman really becomes, I always say the woman that walks in the door and the woman that leaves are two fundamentally different people. She really, once you've unlocked the genie within and the self-belief starts to emerge, the rest takes care of itself. So we've now got 3 versions of that program. One works with end-of-season merchandise, customer returns, mainly fashion. The next program, and that is now called Resell. The next program is called Repair, where we work, if you return your iron kettle to the likes of a Clicks or a ShopRite Checkers or any of the general merchandise retailers, that same problem exists. There's nobody in the back of the store with a screwdriver checking whether there's a short on the plug. And so that becomes waste, and we now work mainly with unemployed men. We also have a 2-year program, and we add the technical skills so that he learns to repair appliances, starting with a toaster, by the time he's finished, all the way up to a microwave. And then again, he's trading in that merchandise. So the difference there is buy, repair, sell. We have a 3rd program which works with excess fabric and trims within the general retail supply chain. So when the floral pants that didn't sell in the season, there's probably fabric that hasn't been made up because they could see that it was a slow seller, and that fabric isn't going to be used next season. That fabric then gets donated to our remake program, and we recruit women who have got basic sewing skills, add the technical skills so that they can start a micro manufacturing business. And in that, we also use product that you wouldn't think, where does it go? So a banner in the shop window that says summer 2024. When summer's over, that banner is now waste. We're working with the Fashini Group. We turn that into sleeping bags, and they now donate those sleeping bags to a shelter. And obviously a woman's earning an income from her manufacturing business. So those are our 3 core projects in the circular economy. And they each have a revenue that we sell. We get free goods. The goods are then processed in our facility. They're sold to the individual because we're teaching her how to run a real business. Our program is free, and we use the proceeds essentially to pay for the program. And then we also have a program in early learning because we work with mothers. We were able to see that she really does value education. And she was actually shipping her child outside of her neighborhood in search of better education. So we've created a project for the early learning sector where we help women running daycare centers and turn those into what we call 5-star early learning centers that are also viable businesses. And then we also have a training company where we've taken everything that we've developed and we now roll that out into other nonprofits as well as corporates, because many of our programs appeal to low-wage earners, so entry-level staff, of which there are thousands and thousands in the retail sector, as well as many other sectors.
Tracey, that reach is absolutely amazing. And obviously the number of programs that you have and the scale that you're operating at with them is really significant. And I really want to talk about those because, I mean, you know, the way I compare this to a for-profit business, if you will, is that you've got different products now operating in different markets, serving different stakeholders. Not only that, but you've been able to geographically expand. And I've got a couple of philosophical questions I want to get into first, just about the philosophy of generating wealth within the topic of a nonprofit. But from my understanding, the way that the model works is like a value proposition to corporates, is that you've got all this stock that you're sitting on that's a waste anyway, but you also still have ESD points that you're able to acquire. So it's essentially valuing the stock at what it would be worth in retail, but you cannot sell it. And so it's basically saying that you are you're donating. It's the same. It's the equivalent of donating cash. So you're donating your goods at a certain retail value, saying that that's what's been happening. As long as there's proof that it's going into a new value chain. And then the model there is that, and they just connect the dots for me again, how money flows on the other side, because it's free for women and men to join these programs, to start to become entrepreneurs. They then start operating using a lot of what you provide as their own stock. Is there some kind of payback model, or is there like a supplier relationship? How does that work? How does money flow within this?
Yeah, so the stock is donated by the retailers. We then process it. So think of our facility like a giant factory shop. So we then process it. We put a price on those goods. So they are buying the merchandise from us at significantly discounted prices because we want her to be successful, but we don't want her to think that she's getting charity. It's really important. It's actually about the shift in the mindset. So she buys the stock from us, and as we say in our organization, she only needs to do 3 things. 1, she needs to show up, and she needs to absolutely utilize all of aspects of our program, which is our training, our mentorship, our life coaching. She needs to volunteer her services once a day, and she needs to run a great business. Because if she does that, I've generated sufficient revenue to pay for all of the programmatic inputs that she gets. We spend about 45,000 Rand per annum on each participant. And if she purchases 45,000 Rands worth of goods, then essentially I've paid for her the cost of having her in that program. So we're quite tough on the women. We hold them to standards, and we want her to be successful because it's a win-win-win. So from a retailer's point of view or from a corporate's point of view, it's a win-win for them. They are able to claim enterprise development points. In one of our programs, also supplier development points. They are actually improving their controls. So can you imagine all this stock in the back of a store, and in the past, perhaps some charities collected it. You didn't really know if it was a better charity or non-better charity. Now they have one central collection point, and we can report back to them on exactly how much product we've selected, and we can report to them exactly where it went, down to an item per person. And so they also have stories to tell. We're just the conduits, if you think about it this way. They can actually tell the direct story around how their enterprise development initiative impacted a woman in Khayelitsha, and they can tell her story, and they do that. So it really is kind of a no-brainer for them. They could have sold the stock, and some still do. And they could have sold it through an outlet store. They could have sold it to a wholesaler. But when they see the benefits of the impact that this has on a life, this is a future potential customer. And by us building the economy one person at a time, these are more potential customers in the future. So if you take that long-term view as an organization, it is a no-brainer.
100%. So we're very philosophically aligned. And like I said, I did want to get into that. But I just the last question that I have of understanding the model, and I guess I understand the sustainability of it, but just the initiation of the model on the side of the entrepreneur. And I love the fact that you're quite hard on them because entrepreneurship's hard. But the actually getting started points. So I mean, because if they're going to be having to purchase the stock from you in order to sell, that kind of makes sense. But how do they get started in the first place? Are they going to, as part of the program, I mean, do they get a certain basis level of stock and supply in order to get off the ground? How does that work?
Yes. So the first tranche of stock that they get is 700 Rands worth of goods, and that they take as a loan. So the first purchase, she's purchasing 700 Rand. That 700 Rand will be turned into 2.5 to 3 grand overnight. And she actually gets 6 months to pay off that loan. So before she can access stock for the next month, she has to make her loan repayment. Many pay it off sooner, but that's essentially, basically we give her the working capital to get started.
Okay. Amazing. And I also love that as a system of accountability too. Really emphasizing that as again, I love that as you're a non-profit organization, but you're not a charity at the end of the day, which is it's critical for empowerment.
And it's very important. I think charity does more harm than good. Nobody wants charity.
Oh.
Everybody wants to do this for themselves, because that is the fundamental component here, is that every time you give a handout, all you're saying to somebody is, shame, you can't, I can, let me do it for you. And essentially what you're entrenching is the I can't mindset. And that becomes the dependency mindset. And the dependency mindset becomes the entitled mindset. So it's absolutely critical. The way we've designed our model is not because we needed to make money. The way we designed our model is to be truly empowering, where we are teaching real business concept so that she believes that she's a businesswoman. And she is. And therefore, she can take the skill, and when our program ends, she will continue to believe she's a businesswoman, not that she can't do it because TCB is no longer here for her anymore. So I think we do far too much handouts in South Africa, and we need to change that. People want to do it for themselves.
Yeah, there's not enough empowerment out there, and I fully agree. So there's what you explained right at the beginning really shone kind of a light on my own like life and perspective, and obviously privilege to an extent, in that how normalized entrepreneurship is for me. As you mentioned, spoken about at the dinner table. Like as a white English speaking South African that went to Hilton College, I'm in the top 0.1% of financial privilege and network privilege in this country. And the nature of that means that what is normalized for me, so I love this also from Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell. It's like the reason why people from wealthy backgrounds often end up becoming successful is because they have a level of entitlement to success, and they don't have entitlement as a trait. I mean, well, yeah, they do. I've got a lot of people who went to school with a very entitled human. But the point is, it's like I believe that I am entitled to success, even though I still need to work for it. And a lot of that, in terms of the norm, is entrepreneurship, and that's just the norm that is created. So that's the one side of the narrative in terms of working for yourself and having to work hard for that is there because it's what we've grown up with and normalized. But the other side now is like what I really want to understand is also the for-profit side, because it's again where what I share with you philosophically is building great sustainable businesses, right? Our vision is imagine a world where just 10% more SMEs were able to be sustainable without being dependent on the founders that started them. What would that do for wealth creation? What would that do for being a present parent? What would that do for mental health? This is our way of trying to make the world a better place. But even part of that pursuit is like there's still a goal, a desire, and a value that I place on generating wealth for myself. And that's also been kind of culturally, it's intertwined culturally with the way that I was brought up. So the reason why I say all that is I want to split the conversation into two around speaking around this social cultural context of people being raised outside of a norm of entrepreneurship. But then I also want to speak now to you specifically when you are helping people, as you said earlier, with wealth creation, right? But you chose to do this as a nonprofit organization. And so for me as an entrepreneur who's very philosophically aligned with what you're doing and really believes in entrepreneurship as well, but still believes in a for-profit model, because I would love to see myself generate wealth and material success too. I'm curious, your personal philosophy is what's in this, like, I'm going to ask this bluntly because I know the answer is not what's in it for you, but what's in it for you in terms of picking this sort of organization.
What's in it for me is there's no better joy than watching a person discover themselves in front of you and being what we would call response able. So, I grew up just like you. I believed I could do anything. Okay. And I wasn't born like that. Okay. That was the belief system that was around our dining room table. I believed I could do anything I wanted to do. And sadly, a very, very high percentage of South Africans who grow up in poverty believe that is their destiny. And they believe they can't do anything that they want, anything they want to do because they've got so many, the because, always I can't because. And that's a belief system. And watching the lid lift on that belief system, and watching that intergenerational entrepreneurial spirit start to fire again, when that mom becomes a role model and that kid is going to say to their kids, my mommy raised me on her informal business. And when that kid is working in mommy's informal business at the age of 12, 15, the entrepreneurial spirit is igniting. The belief is igniting. And when you watch mommy go from living in a shack to owning a home and getting a driver's license and buying a car and employing people, there is no better joy than that. And I believe we're all put on this world to make the world a better place. And if I can help one mother carry the entrepreneurial spirit for the generations to come, that's satisfying. It's interesting because I came from a big corporate job with the corner office and the
Where everything's
wonderful
about shareholder value at the end of the day.
annual bonus that used to pop in and the share options and all of the rest. And having to give that up is something you kind of go, oh, was that a wise personal choice? Was that a wise personal choice? But I can tell you money doesn't make you happy once you past a certain point. And that point might be different for everybody. I'm at that point where money isn't going to make me any happier. I think one of the hardest things perhaps when you start a nonprofit is there are a few things to consider, is that you can never pass it down to your family. So whilst I would love to get my children are very invested in what I do. They're very interested in what I do, particularly my daughter. If I was a sole shareholder of this company, she would be an intern right now and be groomed to become the successor in time to come. But I don't have that authority to decide necessarily that a family member will take this. Well, essentially, the nonprofit is owned by nobody. It's run by a board, an independent board, and the board has that authority. So I have no voting right. I have no shareholding that can force that. It has to be a collective decision by the board. And because it is a nonprofit, it's more likely that you would look for nepotism, and that could be a very unlikely path in a nonprofit. So those are some of the sad parts about it. Is you've created this thing from nothing. It's now actually a very big organization, but it's not going to pass down within your own family. When I leave, I've left, and hope that those that get the custodianship get to carry it forward, going forward.
And in terms of your own financial health and position and wealth position, are you better off after you left Woolworths, or would you say that you were more in a financially stronger position then? I know we're getting personal with this information now, but I really want to understand your philosophy.
I'm definitely worse off, but I'm not in any suffering in any way. So
sure.
I think my criticism of corporate is that I don't necessarily think that the salaries match the value that people deliver. I think if once you get to an executive senior level in corporates, I think I look at what many of my friends who are still in corporate are earning, and I go, really? You earn that for doing that? I think they're inflated. I think people can get greedy. And I think materialism plays too much of a factor in people's lives. So yes, I don't have excess like I used to have, in a sense. I never used to necessarily think about money. There was always enough. Now you have to be a bit more cautious, but I think it makes you value it more. I think what's important when you start anything, and just like any entrepreneur, when we started our nonprofit, we had to invest our own capital and our own time. So for the first year, I worked for nothing. And I see far too many people start companies, businesses, nonprofits, expecting to get funding on day one because you've got a great idea and you're a nice person and you've got a good idea. And my advice to anybody is, if you really, really believe in this, you've got to bootstrap it for at least 12 months. And if you can't see your way to doing that, then from a nonprofit point of view, then you don't care enough about the mission. That is what it's going to take. And I cared enough about the mission to be able to do that.
So Tracy, my intention here very much is not to question you, right? I just want to say that before I continue, because I'm going to go deeper. My intention is to understand, because I come from both culturally how I was raised, but also just the people that I work with and what some of my goals are for my business and what they've shared with me and my shareholders and my co-founder within the business is that there is a strong motivation for material success, right? For me, that will never transcend fulfillment. It's the reason why I chose the world of strategy, coaching, and facilitation. Because, like you, I love seeing the lights go on in someone's eyes when they get this clarity and confidence about how they can proceed, how they can take their business to new heights. This belief that they end up having in themselves and in their business. That's why I do this. But for me, um, if there wasn't a hope that I had around creating some form of financial freedom that would be created around this reward, and I'm using those words deliberately, is because I don't care about getting, I don't care about brands, I don't care about getting a yacht or anything like that. What I care about is having a sense of financial freedom, is being able to control what I do with my time, and my money, and doing that. And so, and again, one thing I'll acknowledge saying that out loud is that's still relative to lifestyle, right? It's like I could potentially get some level of financial freedom right now, just changing the level of my lifestyle as well. So with this is where I'm also going to need your help, because I'm also self-reflecting as I'm also unpacking this with you, because it's part of why I do this is unpacking some belief systems really. But when we operate in this paradigm of for profit, right? And it's such a solid paradigm because there's a majority of organizations that get registered in the world are essentially for profits. I like what you shared there around social enterprise instead of nonprofit, because nonprofit is really just it's this but not. But yeah, before we're getting into the business philosophy of that, I'm still really unpacking it for you, because where I can relate to from a fulfillment perspective. And tell me about a little bit about this midlife crisis that you mentioned. What changed for you, where really the realization was, regardless of what I'm able to create for myself, the fact that I cannot pass this organization down to my children, the fact that I'm limiting the wealth that gets passed on to future generations. What shifted for you that made you think that this is more important than any of that? And what is, I guess, and also what is your relationship with valuing money, wealth, and material success?
Look, I've never been somebody that values things and stuff. If anything, the thing that I would spend my money on is experiences.
There's a lot of research that also says the people that do that are happier people. You don't need research. You could just also get anecdotes, speak to people who have lived a lot of experiences, and they're just happier people.
Yeah. So that for me, what car I drive, and I personally, I think brands are the biggest, I don't know what to say here, but I think I would say, got you, you fell for it, we've tapped into the psyche of ego, and we've got you. And I kind of look at it from that perspective. I'm not going to buy into the sheep mentality of we all need, the more brands I have on my handbag and the bigger my watch and the car that I drive defines me. None of that stuff has ever defined me. In fact, I kind of look at, I suppose I've always looked down on it in a sense, as in, okay, you've been sold down the river. Can you not see what's happening to you? And gifts are not my love language. So I've always valued experiences. And I think I wanted life to be an experience. I didn't want to be a life about accumulating stuff. I wanted life to be an experience. And what happened to me was that I was working really, really hard, and I wanted to be a great mom. I had 2 children at the time that were 12 and 10. And I really wasn't able to be a present mom because I was giving 100%. So I'd sold my soul for the money, if you want. I loved my job. I want to say it was a great company and I loved my job. But once you start climbing that corporate ladder, and you've now bought into that lifestyle, because you've got a bigger house that you don't even see half the bedrooms and,
It becomes addictive.
it becomes addictive, and then you're in a social circle where somebody's got a better car than you and a better house than you, and I could actually feel the ball and chain kind of being tightened around my neck, that if you don't make the leap, you're never going to be able to make the leap. And I couldn't see myself doing. I think there is a routine to working in a job, in that every year we've got to deliver 15% growth on the year before, no matter whether there's a COVID happening or the lights are out or whatever. I don't care. As shareholders, because we're all pension owners, we want a 15% return on and the sort of, gosh, I'm going to be doing this for the next 25 years. I'm going to be trying to generate shareholder value for somebody else at the expense of my own well-being to some degree, by choice. I was a workaholic, and I can't say what happened to me because I think it was always within me. I've always had this need to see others, to mentor others, to develop others. And I would do that in whatever role that I was in. But I wanted to do that in a much deeper way. I just had, and I'd spent 2 years with a medical doctor who specializes in mindfulness as a stress management tool. And he really helped me explore what I really wanted in life. What did I really, really want? Well, I wanted fulfilling experiences. And I didn't want those just to be holidays. I wanted those to be every day,
You wanted your life to be fulfilling, not certain.
I wanted my life to be fulfilling.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And there was something, it's an inside thing. I think it's an inside thing that if you thought with your head, I would never have done it. So, I eventually got to the point after 2 years with this amazing man. I was really living in the present moment. Really, every single day I was fully present in the present moment, which I'd never been in my life because I was always chasing something, whether it's chasing the next deadline or, chasing the next goal, the next promotion. And when I got there, I wasn't, okay, I'm here. All right, where am I going next? It was always a moving forward rather than just really being present in the present moment.
Who's this doctor, out of curiosity? Because just on my story, I've got a therapeutic journey where I'm actually trying to deal with the concept of striving, right? It's different to ambition, according to my psychologist, but it's this constant striving that I'm in, that I'm trying to, that is directly getting in the way of a pervading sense of inner peace and presence and mindfulness. So who's this doctor? And besides me, if anyone else is curious to figure out more about
Dr. Simon Weitzman. It's Dr. Simon Weitzman. So he's a medical doctor, got tired of administering pills for illnesses that were stress related, and decided to go to the root cause of the problem. And the root cause of the problem is that we're not living in our bodies anymore. We're living in our heads. And really centers you. And he basically saved my life, I think. And he gave me the courage because essentially what I had was the very definition of success. And everybody's cheering for you. You go like, wow, you're amazing. Congratulations. You've got this and you've got this. And your parents, you're the very definition of your success. You've made your parents happy. They're so proud of you. And now you're going to go, oopsie, this is not what I want for my life. But I don't know what I yet want. I don't actually know what I want to do. And I just got to that point. And I arrived in his rooms one day and I said, Simon, I know what I need to do. And he said, I know you know what you need to do. And I went home to my husband and I said, I need to get off this corporate ladder. There's something else that I've been put on this planet to do. And essentially, we didn't think about it. We just knew it was the right thing for our family. And we're good with money as a family. So and that's something that was handed down to me from my father. I think from the day I was born, my father was telling me to save for my retirement. So from our article clerk salary, which was 1,200 Rand a month, I saved my probably 10% in those days into my pension. It's still sitting there at the age of 55. And so good money management was ingrained in me, and we practiced that. And so we had some luxury that we'd built enough wealth for me to explore where this next chapter would take me. So overnight, more than half our salary disappeared. And I took a year off. I did a lot of volunteer work. I did some consulting work in that year, and then another year to build the beginning of what is taking care of business today. So no financial income for basically 2 years.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that story. And yeah, being open about sharing as well. I'm lucky enough to have had my midlife crisis at 23. And where I had a shift in value orientation. It's also great, given what my profession is that I actually got to learn a lot about the science and theory behind this. Is that value orientations, or there's a model called spiral dynamics, which is essentially a system of understanding our levels of consciousness and awareness and our value orientation, and how this can shift over time. It's another way of looking at it. Essentially, it's a model of adult psychological development. And what happens when we this is why I often say is like never waste a good crisis. Is that when I see someone who's in an existential crisis, I understand how much suffering and pain they're in, but I'm like, good, keep going, because what you're going to get to on the other side is a far more fulfilled and authentic version of yourself, as long as you have the support to be able to get through that. I think that's the critical part of it.
Absolutely.
But again, this was my shift in value orientation early, is when it was when I was doing my master's degree, and I started getting to this point of like really wanting to be a psychologist, but also identifying with this professional career. And then I kind of got really disillusioned really quickly. I was like, is being an HR professional all that what the path is meant to be as an organizational psychologist? And then I started then questioning, it's like, why am I getting into this in the first place? Who am I as a person? And really started unraveling all of this around what is it that I actually care about and what matters to me. And I think it's still incredibly common for people, and also just speaking to entrepreneurship to bring this on theme, is that a lot of people will go, and I've heard it so many times, where founders of businesses will go and build it, do amazing things over 5 to 10 years, pretty much like flirt constantly with burnout, sell the business, and then wake up the next day and was like, I have absolutely nothing to do, and then clinical depression straight away, because they've sold a part of their identity as a big part of it. And so that's when and always after that phase, you often see these people going into caring more about leadership, caring more about coaching, caring more about developing others, paying it forward. It's this mentality that often happens with people once they've achieved some kind of significant material level of achievement. Afterwards, some form of crisis, and then after that, some form of paying it forward mentality that is consistent with everyone. I think you're just the first person that's been able to scale that, which is great for you.
I have some news for you though. You're going to have that's not a midlife crisis. You're going to have a proper midlife crisis.
Oh yeah.
Everybody does have one. And actually what's, I think, fascinating in the entrepreneurial context, I think it's the perfect time to start a business. Absolutely perfect time. And that's why they say, the average successful entrepreneur started in that, around that age, late 30s, early 40s, because first of all, you've actually learned from others how to build a great company. I learned everything I know from the companies that I work for the bosses that I work for. You built some wealth, so you can perhaps invest some of that wealth, and you can you can take a few more risks. And secondly, you've got an incredible network that you can tap into that will help you along the way. So I think, I get lots and lots of people approach me saying, how did you do it? And the answer is, well, a lot of people want to transition easily. They want to leave the corporate job and then have this business that's going to pay them a salary overnight. The only way you're going to do it is to leave. You actually have to take the leap of faith and commit yourself. It's a commitment to this new thing. Give it your energy. And if it's the right thing, it will flourish. But there isn't a, I don't believe there's an easy thing. And this is why when people get retrenched, it's actually, especially at this age of life, can actually be one of the biggest gifts, because it kind of gives you that, especially if you've been with a company quite a long time, gives you sufficient income to kind of bridge that gap between leading something and starting something. And so it's very common for businesses to start at this age because of exactly that. What is the purpose of my life? What is the meaning of my life starts to come up at that age.
Yeah, 100%. And on the topic of bridging gaps, I think I want to bridge this gap between the entrepreneurs that you develop, that you coach, you mentor through taking care of business. Because again, you're very right. And I think in the sense that being a professional for that many years, working with organizations, developing some wealth, developing some risk tolerance, essentially be at a time when you can have your second career, but doing it into entrepreneurially is there because you've got the resources, you've got the network. But the nature of the women and men that you empower and you develop within your organization don't have that. Right, they don't have the same level of knowledge and skill and level of perspective. So I guess to transition this back to the nature of the primary stakeholder that you're benefiting, like there's an absolute laundry list of the number of things working against most people in the world being able to start a business. Can you unpack for me what those things are? And as keeping on, I guess, the theme we've started now around like philosophy and psychology, what are some of those belief systems and mindsets that you've really seen holding a lot of people back and then shifted over time, and how you made those shifts?
Yeah. So I think one thing is, if you've never been poor, you'll never understand what it's like to be poor. And that's, if you're going to help anybody who's starting from that position, you need to do deep work on yourself to understand what it really feels like and what it's done neurologically to the brain development. You kind of, I think, if you're not poor, you make an assumption, well, you have nothing, you might as well try this. Okay? We often say that. You have nothing, you might as well try this. Take a risk. What could you lose? Well, the reality is the different for a person who has nothing and is worrying about whether they're going to have food for their children to eat tonight. Any decision is a massive risk. It is often the risk between life and death. Okay? Between it is the pathway to suffering if this fails. And I think that is actually one of the misconceptions, is that the poor will take risks. It's absolute opposite. They will take less risks because they are preserving often the little that they have.
Because the consequences are so high of getting it wrong.
The consequences are massive. You know, the consequences are absolutely massive. And then you've got the belief system. So if you failed at almost everything in your life and you hadn't seen anybody successful around you, in your family, in your community, why would you believe you're different? You know? And so unlocking that belief, always say, getting the fire burning. So like often her hope for her life is, she doesn't have hope because she's been so disappointed by life to date. Life keeps throwing her boulders and it just keeps coming at her. And she's exhausted. She's hopeless. She doesn't have this fire burning in her inside. It's out. In fact, many times a woman who's a single mother, is contemplating suicide because it's actually too painful to watch, to not be able to take care of your children. Can you imagine not being able to feed your children tonight and how painful that must be as a mother? So the psychology of getting this fire lit gently, and you've got to, in our world, we call it I think the mistake that people make in the world of helping people start businesses, particularly first-time business owners, particularly individuals that have faced a life of poverty and are currently in poverty, is they go, well, it's easy. You just do this, this, and this, and this, and let's put it in an incubator, and voila, everyone will be successful. The problem is that that business and entrepreneurship is the hardest job in the world. Okay, you have to be multi-skilled. Okay, multi-skilled. You have to have long-range planning ability. Okay, now if you've lived in a life of poverty, your brain has shut down your ability to think into the future. Okay, because tomorrow is too hard to think of, and I might not be alive tomorrow. So your brain is actually gone into preservation mode. And if this has been a lifelong thing, you've never thought into the long term. So a business that even has, I've got to buy stock today, save the money, transform it into something, and I'm only going to get paid in a month's time.
That's a totally different paradigm.
Out of reach. Totally different paradigm. And so the critical thing, if anybody's wanting to do work in this particular space, is to make sure that it is the right business to meet that person where they're at, not where you're at. And in our world, we call that a just right challenge. If a challenge is just right, we use this as the challenge. And if it is a just right challenge that somebody feels isn't too difficult to respond to, that, this looks like something I can do, they will then respond. And if it is the right challenge, they will get success. They will get an I can moment. And that I can moment will secrete hormones that feel good in their brain. And then they'll go, can you give me another one of those challenges? And that's how we learn as humans. We're occupational beings, but we learn through responding to challenges. If you give me a challenge that looks like this, first of all, my primitive brain's going to go into overdrive. I'm going to go, well, that's not for me. I can't do that. And they're not going to respond. And then we as the development practitioners go, I'm so frustrated. Why are these people not responding?
Because this is such a basic skill. This is such a basic challenge, because the point of relativity is there, where what you've mastered or what you're comparing to versus for them, because these are just the fundamentals of learning, really. And it's about the fact that it's like, how am I showing some progression? It's why, I could relate this to video games. It's why the gaming industry has absolutely exploded in the past few decades, because there is challenge and failure embedded, but levels and an ability to retry without consequence. And so it just completely hooks our brains into it.
Exactly. And so we started our model, and I didn't actually know this before we started, but somewhere we decided, I was frustrated. I'd done a little bit of work into looking at the incubation space and seeing there was lots of money being thrown into incubation, but nobody at the end of programs was actually running a business.
Yeah.
And they all had fancy certificates, but we were doing nothing in terms of real entrepreneurial development. And basically that's where the idea for trading is the simplest form of business. I'd also seen far too many programs where we spend all the time on the technical skills. Let's make her a great craftswoman or a beader, or all of those kind of technical skills. Spend a year training her, but she's not doing the selling of her product. Okay. Now, if you can't sell as an entrepreneur, you can have the best product on the planet. Your business will die. Entrepreneurship is more about selling than anything else. So that's why we started with a trading model. We could have done any different type of business with waste or whatever, but trading, it's short range planning. We use a mantra in our business: buy low, sell high, do it often for cash. In real retail, they say buy low, sell high, do it often with someone else's money, which is your 90-day terms.
Okay. and so
the model that we chose was fundamental to match with the participants that we were truly trying to get to and work with in a deep way. And so everything we do is designed as a just right challenge. Everything we do is very, very practical and experiential. You don't come to a long lecture and hear all the theory of business. And it's actually, we play in the classroom. We've spaced what we learn at exactly the right time that we know you're probably going to experience that in your business, so that you actually can respond immediately to the challenge and practice it, so you can get that I can moment and you start to believe you can do it. And then that belief becomes something bigger. And eventually one day you go, I just believe. Think about running a marathon. If you started with someone who'd never run and said, hey, because I'm a marathon runner, you can run 42Ks, it's so easy. Yes, it's easy for you. Me, I'm not going to even put my shoes on if we're going to start with 42Ks. But if you said, hey, could we go for a walk today? And you didn't even tell me we were working towards a marathon. And then tomorrow you said, hey, can we walk another kilometer and over a period of time? And then, hey, could we jog to the lampposts? Guess what? I might become a marathon runner. But it's not that you want to be focused on. You want to just be focused on the challenges in front of you. And I think that's the fundamental thing, is program design. Whatever solution you're bringing people needs to be very, very carefully thought out. I think the other thing is that we have a massive responsibility when we are offering someone an opportunity to start a business, that particularly for an individual that I've described, if they fail at this business opportunity that you're offering them, they are very, very, very unlikely to try again.
That makes sense.
Because it's just confirming that their business is not for them. It's not for somebody like me. And so the next time somebody comes with a business opportunity, that risk tolerance is going to be even less, and the belief system is going to be even more entrenched. So we have hundreds of incubators around the country, and that's changed dramatically since I've been doing this work in 15 years. And people are jumping from incubator to incubator and learnership to learnership. Are they actually growing, or are they just hopping from failure to failure, And how many kind of dead in the waters do we have as a result of incorrect program design?
And I think the point of that is, this is where, again, I still need to learn a lot more about the space. I'll caveat that before I further comments. But I think there's what I'm going to say now is more from what I've heard from a lot of people that have been in this game, is the fact that there's these intermediaries that play within the spaces of ESD and grant funding, really, where there's a legislative requirement in order to be able to benefit small business owners and entrepreneurs. But unfortunately, is what people look at that as is, and you mentioned the topic Creed earlier, is that it's like, that's free money, right? So let me go and get access to that money, show and put together this program that's like, looks like on paper is going to make entrepreneurs and provide these services. And then we bucket 60 to 80% of the cash as our benefit because we've done something great, and they actually benefit nothing. So I think the point there is, it's like, it's not necessarily, it's not even an issue of the quality of program. It's got to do with the fact that the program wasn't actually built for the entrepreneurs.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And if I look at business as a ladder, we're working with somebody who hasn't even considered climbing this ladder. I'm trying to convince her to stop knocking on the dead-end door with her, no grade 12, trying to get a job that requires grade 12 as an entry-level requirement. It's like, hey, here's a new ladder. Here's a different ladder where you can create your own wealth, and you can have much more flexibility, and your kids can be involved, et cetera, et cetera. Why don't you try and get on the first rung of this ladder, which is the simple trading business in our resale program case? Many people, that getting someone on that first rung of the ladder is much, much, much harder than getting them once they're on to keep climbing. Yeah. And I've seen many programs.
It's harder to start.
Yeah. Try and start here, fail, and say, oh, you know what? We actually only going to deal with high impact entrepreneurs who can create jobs. because it is much easier. You're dealing with somebody who's well educated, they've got social networks, they've probably got some social capital, and yes, they can create jobs. But we actually need to work on all levels. Do you know what I mean? We actually need to work here, we need to work at the next level. We can't pick and choose because there are millions of people who cannot find work, who are undereducated and underdeveloped, and we have to ignite the entrepreneurial spirit if we want to build an entrepreneurial nation for everybody.
No, I fully agree. And immediately there's, I hope a lot of people I can just imagine anyone that's starting an incubator, whether it's VC backed, whether it's not, regardless of the context. I think you're sitting on obviously 15 years of experience in being able to do this. And regardless of, I think, the context someone comes from, there are certain programmatic approaches and design approaches towards how is it that you get them to start something that can actually be scalable and sustainable. But on the topic of scalability, right, I really want to get into in terms of how you scale this. I thank you for the time of really getting into your personal philosophy, getting into what entrepreneurship really is from multiple angles. I've really enjoyed that. And so let's talk about taking care of business now. How did you scale it to where it is now? And just give me a sense of what scale you are at right now.
Yeah, so we're 15 years in. We have 4 large branches around the country in Cape Town, Durban, Johannesburg, and East London. We have about 130 employees and many, many more part-timers who do mentorship and training for us. In total, at any given time in our main programs, we've got about 1,200 people in the 2-year cycle at any given time. And as I mentioned earlier, we're getting about 2 million items a year. We've got all of the major retailers on board, certainly all of the major South African retailers on board, 16 retailers committed in total, and they're giving us 2 million items a year, which are worth about 150 million rand. And the crux of the success of this model is collaboration. And so this could have been a project that, for example, Woolworths was the first one who said yes because of my connection there. They could have said, oh yes, this is a great project. We're going to do it as an enterprise development project for us. Can you put our name on the door, and please don't go and talk to any other retailers? That could have been their strategy. But it's not their style. And they encouraged us to engage other retailers. And this is the single biggest program in the world of retailers working together. Retailers hate each other. Okay, they absolutely hate each other. And here they found a way to work together and for the common good. And I think we are only successful because we have a wide variety of partners. They all come and go at different stages. They have different cycles. They have different clearance cycles. They have different crises at different points where stock flows to us. And we have different categories of products. From entry-level product today, the shop floor was packed. And that's because we got Country Road in last week. And Country Road is, everybody wants Country Road. So we have a complete variety. We have all, absolutely everything available. And that is because they chose to work collectively. And I think that is, for me, a big corporate lesson, is that we need to find ways to collaborate rather than individually creating our own little enterprise development pitch projects. We need to look at a bigger picture and a bigger picture view. So we started, in 2010 at the back of an orphanage, and they're building a garage piled with junk that the city of Cape Town kindly allowed us to use. Within 1 year, we'd rented a bigger warehouse. Within 3 years, we'd had to get a bigger warehouse, and we opened our branch in Johannesburg, and then soon after with Joburg. And we got confidence to do that because retailers that had footprints, like Mr. Price was in Durban, they said, we're going to fully support you there. And at the time, the Edcon Group was in Johannesburg, and they said, so we had kind of an anchor retailer in each region, which gave us the confidence. And we had some key funders who, we weren't able to break even in the early days, who funded our expansion because they could see the potential and the impact. And now we actually own our three major buildings, three branches where we have big facilities. Our facilities are, over 2,000, sometimes to 3,000 square meters of facility. So we now own we own our Cape Town, Durban, and Johannesburg buildings. But it was really, essentially people say, I believe in you. I believe that you can do this. And I'm going to get behind you. And that kind of gives you the confidence to say, okay, I must be on the right path. You're getting good signals. And then we took some leaps of faith at times. I think one of the challenges of running a nonprofit is the person, you are reliant on external funding. And that external funding is, I think, often shakier than other funding. Once someone's invested in your business, they're in it for the long haul. Nonprofit funding is a CSI committee somewhere. That person comes, they go, a board sits down one day and says, hey, we're changing our strategy. And so you have to live with a little bit of a higher risk tolerance. I think it's a different risk tolerance.
I find that so interesting about entrepreneurship is like if you didn't think the risk was enough, go try start a nonprofit.
Exactly. And it's kind of for a high performance individual, it's kind of sometimes no matter how good you are, the funding landscape can change because it blows with the wind. Climate wasn't a factor 10 years ago. Now it's like everything's got to have a climate angle. And if you don't have a climate angle, sorry, we changed our strategy from this to climates. Sorry, could you start a climate project? You know what I mean? So you're having to live with that level of uncertainty. And it's not directly linked to how well your business does. It's not like invent a great product, sell it, and if you keep doing that enough, the money will flow because the person buying the product is the same person who's funding your business. It's your revenue. Your revenue can here be, in some cases, grant funding. So that is difficult. I think for an accountant, I've got to I've got to be on the other side of the begging table where I used to be the one making those decisions, and it's not the least fun part of my job.
So what are some of the unique challenges that you faced in scaling this business? I think obviously that the one there is, like, I think the nature of being a for-profit business is that you've also got resources that if you are successful in this model, you have resources that you're able to reinvest into the company for growth, for expansion. Right, as you're saying, in terms of this environment being a nonprofit, that doesn't necessarily apply. And I think that also goes back to the name of nonprofit, is the fact that the business is still able to generate a profit. It just cannot be distributed to any shareholders because there are no shareholders, and so the money needs to just be reallocated in the business. So I think that's the proof of the model, is that obviously you needed quite a bit of grant funding as you went, but then after a while, you're able to just sustain that from the own revenue you're creating, showing that the model works by developing entrepreneurs. And then by developing a profit, you're able to just grow this organization further and further across the country. So I think that was obviously must have been a huge obstacle to firstly overcome, is essentially becoming your own, your own cash flow positivity, really, within the business, instead of being dependent on external funding. What besides that were some real challenges that you had to face in order to scale this?
I think the sales cycle within convincing all of our retail, they didn't all come on day one. Some, we've actually just got one retailer who joined us last year, a fairly large one. That has been a 13-year sales cycle.
Yeah.
And kind of, just being patient. I think being patient and keep working the system and don't give up. If you keep selling the benefits and telling the stories enough, it will come. And I think it's easy to feel defeated sometimes. So luckily, I've got a co-founder who's like a dog with a bone. She never gives up. She's not scared of rejection, and she's just kept building these relationships, and they eventually have paid off for us. So getting a critical mass of retailers was certainly a key component of scaling. I think we because I'm an accountant and I've seen great businesses running. I think making sure that you are bold enough to invest in systems from day one and to continue to invest in systems within nonprofits particularly, and I think this goes for entrepreneurs. It's kind of like the thing that we have to do. It's not sexy. Where's the return on investment? Like, show me your accounting system's going to deliver a return on investment, or your CRM is going to deliver a return on investment. And for me, that was a non-negotiable because of my background and my training. And I think if we hadn't put in good systems and processes and thought like a business, thought with a business mindset to build this business, I don't think we would have got as far. I think we would have fallen over. And so we were able to manage our money in such a way that we could, and we are always improving systems and processes. And most people who join us go, wow, this feels like it's set up like a business would be set up. And the answer is yes, that shouldn't be unique to for-profits. That is good business practice. So that has really helped us, and that helps build trust. People trust that when they give us money, it's well taken care of. We can report on everything, and we can make their lives easier. I think that's the other thing, is that everybody's got busy lives, and if you can be the organization that makes somebody's job easier, if they're giving you product or they're giving you money, wow, they're going to back you again. Because you weren't a hassle to deal with. And many nonprofits don't invest that and then fall short because people go, but I gave you this money, but you can't report on it. And, and I'm not feeling confident that your controls are there. So I think having that training has certainly helped us, and it's a non-negotiable.
On that note, sorry to jump in between there, but just to double down on that lesson is that what's worked for us is that through the lens of customer experience, like asking the questions, are you stress-free to deal with? Like, are you an easy company to deal with for your customers? Do you reduce stress, anxiety, and uncertainty when your customers engage with you? Do they simply have a good emotionally positive experience working with you as a company? Right? It's like, these are things that are critical for customer experience, because we all know what it's like sitting on a call center with a telco or a bank for half an hour with a pretty simple query, and getting absolutely irritated and frustrated because we're not able to get that help and support. But the difference when we work with an organization that can, and what that comes down to is systems, right? Systems, processes that are extremely well oiled and well thought through. But the consequence of that is the experience that your customers and your stakeholders have with you, your business, and what that creates is like so much trust, so much efficiency, so much repeatability, so much retention. And that you create this level where it's hard for you to fail if you maintain that.
Exactly. And then, of course, people. I mean, people, I think one of the toughest things when you do scale, particularly when you scale geographically. So, when you're scaling in one office, I think it's easy to keep the culture because this office has a feeling. The leadership operate in a certain way, and people take their cues from that leadership, and it's proximate to where they're at. I think when you start to open new branches, and you want them all to feel the same way, and for us, the feeling is about how does a participant in our program feel from day one when they join to when they leave. Have we created, our building has an energy And I think it is always tough when you're handing that custodianship to somebody in another geography who hasn't, and the quicker you expand, our first branch, we were able to move somebody from our founding branch to set up our new branch. By the time we got to branch number 3, we couldn't do that, and branch number 4. And so really taking the time, and it takes much more time than you expect, to journey alongside them, to role model what this culture looks and feels like is hard. It's more than a Teams meeting. It's spending time there. It's kind of seconding people until it's like a shot in the arm. This is okay. You now are us. You know what I mean? You it feels like us. You do things like us. And it's not an induction manual. It's kind of so much more than that. And if you get that wrong, the damage that can do.
So that's what I was actually about to ask. Do you have like a cultural playbook that you've, I mean, with these different locations you'd be able to expand into? I mean, and you said those are your large ones, which goes to show that there's definitely a bunch of smaller ones throughout as well. Right? It's like, do you have a playbook for this? Do you have a process? Do you have like how does this, how do you go about essentially, I was going to use the word indoctrinating, which I guess is still valid, but it's got a negative connotation to it. But how do you go about really indoctrinating your culture within these new locations?
Yeah. The way we did that in the beginning was we role modeled it. So that means we had to spend a lot of, first of all, hiring the right person. Culture fit was critical for us. So and often, actually, we didn't hire cold. We actually hired people that knew people who knew people. Do you know what I mean? In other words, this person was at the right stage of their life. They wanted the same things that we wanted. They weren't coming for a job, and somebody knew them in some capacity and could vouch for them, because that single leader who leads that new branch will make or break it. And then I spent a lot of time, and so did my co-founder and any of our team here who started with us from the beginning, spent a lot of time. You keep thinking, okay, it's going to be 1 or 2 trips. Actually, it's not 5 trips, it's 10 trips. It's weeks at a branch where you actually, that first year, you're almost role modeling it, and then you go and check that, and you go and see, it's 60% there, but it's not, you've got to handhold that initial stages. And we did, because we wanted it done in a particular way, and those people have stayed with us, and now that culture is deeply embedded and the succession is there. So that will then live, if you think about it, like it'll be passed down into generation. And, Woolworths was like that. I think I always said, it's a company that kind of, no matter where you go into a store, you'll feel the Woolies culture. And it's not because they do months and months of training. It's because the leadership is role modeling that's how you start to behave within the organization, because this is what we do. This is how we do it here. And you can actually then pick it up through role modeling.
Yeah. So I obviously grasp role modeling as a concept. I think everyone does. Practically walk me through this, right? Like talking about what you would actually do, how you'd show that, how you would essentially not just role model, but teach them that this is the way, this is the behavior. Because it's also, with that, is not, role modeling doesn't just come down to how I behave. It's also the principles behind how I behave. And it's that explanation of, so this is what I'm behaving, but also then telling you this is why I am behaving this way consistently. So I get that. I don't know how to then show that up. So talk me through it, like a day, a week, maybe a month of this process of really role modeling and handing over this culture to this new leader.
Yeah. So, I mean, the way we would have done that if I was setting up a new branch is in the beginning stages, it would be me on a plane. And we would go and do the selection of our first intake. I would actually be doing it with the person supporting, and the new person supporting and observing me. I would probably do the second intake. I would actually probably do the third intake until they actually, this is the type of person we're looking for. I would do a large part of the delivery of the program with some support from my training team. And so they would never be doing something the first time themselves. They would always see it being done at least 2 to 3 times, modeled by somebody who'd been doing it for a long time. So that, I think learning through observing rather than through telling, this is the way we do things versus let me show you how we do things by me doing it and then you copying me, is essentially. So it was lots of time spent on site doing it for her, for doing it in real life, and then me observing that the copying had, or the, what you'd picked up, the cues you'd picked up, you were delivering back in your own way, in your own unique way, and then providing feedback into that person and seeing the continuous growth in them. So yeah, it's don't underestimate it, I think, is the kind of clicking your fingers and saying, hey, we'll open a new branch here and there, and it's all going to be successful because we've got a great business model. And asking that person to mimic your culture is going to be really difficult. Otherwise, you must relocate people within the business.
So what I want to understand, because I mean that makes a lot of sense to me. Where I like to simply explain it is like we tend to be a bit of a narcissistic species, forgetting that we're just great apes, and so therefore I like to say monkey see, monkey do. Right? It's just like we're not necessarily unique in that aspect. It's how children learn from their parents. It's how new people at jobs learn from their managers. It's just a prevailing nature of being a mammal, actually, and that's just how we function, operate. What I want to know is what did you have to have in place to allow you the time, freedom, and peace of mind to go over to these new locations and essentially do all this while still being the CEO of the company?
The story of TCB is that I didn't just have my midlife crisis at 39, so did most of my friends.
Cool. Nothing better than sharing and suffering.
Exactly. So TCB is a collective of women of actually the same age who had their midlife crisis at the same time, who were searching for meaning in their life, and you were all overqualified for the job at the time. They were a marketing executive, an HR executive, an IT executive. And so we were very, very fortunate that we had a really solid senior level team almost on day one. Most prepared to work for nothing on day one, just because they found themselves in the same position as me, wanting to do something meaningful with the next phase of their lives. And that really gave me the freedom to, we had immense trust in our team. We have, multi-skilled, big networks. And so, yeah, I never felt that I couldn't leave them, in a sense. It wasn't, there wasn't a skill gap. There wasn't CEO and then, lots of lower management. We actually were inverted. We were almost overweighted on senior leadership. And kind of had to grow. Everybody was doing, everything. And you always said, if somebody wanted to join us who was an executive who was looking for meaning, well, then you had to be prepared to do things that you hadn't done for a very, very long time. We did everything, Yeah.
That's also, that must be a very good ego filter too.
Correct. Absolutely. So that was really, everybody was all in. Everybody was all in and gave it their all because they all believed in what we were doing.
So I want to understand, how do you view your job? Right. If you're able to go from to key location to key location, training up new leaders, being a mentor, a coach within the organization as well, kind of guiding the vision too. I always find the job of a CEO quite interesting because if done really well, you are actually in service to the organization because you've got a team around you that's just really good, and also as a leadership team able to develop and execute strategy. So it's like the CEO, you become the ultimate servant what the organization needs in many ways. So how do you define your job? What is your job? How do you usually spend your average day, week, and month?
How do I spend, eventually when your organization gets to a size, you are I would call myself the chief cheerleader. Okay. Essentially you want to inspire and support others to take this organization where it can go. So I will be I'm full of ideas. One thing that I never considered myself an entrepreneur when I worked in the corporate world, and probably that's because our family was a family of professionals, not a family of entrepreneurs. So me jumping to the entrepreneurial ladder was like a very foreign thing. But I actually was always an entrepreneur. I always had lots of ideas, and I was always improving ways of doing things or working on corporate strategy. I just didn't think of myself as an entrepreneur. So it's an identity that I didn't get myself. So I am definitely the ideas sparker in the organization. And, on a Monday morning, it'll often start with, I had this idea, and everybody will go, oh my goodness, what now, And my job is to plant seeds and inspire others to want to water those plants and nurture them to growth. I think I'm not and when people feel that they can do it, that they are empowered to do it and accountable, everybody knows the standards to which we hold ourselves collectively, then your job actually becomes really easy. Like sometimes I have to say, hey, when did we decide to do that? And they said, no, actually, Tracey, you planted that seed at this meeting, and I ran with it. And I go, oh, okay, great, fantastic. So kind of giving people the freedom to become entrepreneurs themselves within an organization makes your life so much easier. And I mean, I'm an 8 on the Enneagram, so that's an active controller. But I love giving people the authority to make things better. It's a different style of leadership, and I actually find my energy sapped if I have to micromanage people. I want people to think for themselves. I want people to be proactive and be activators, if you're going to use the strengths profile, and to be responsible and accountable for their actions, and to continue to learn and grow. And then actually some days I think, hey, my time here is done. This thing doesn't need me. This thing doesn't need me anymore. It is an organism that is self-propelling itself. It has its own energy now. It doesn't need me to continue to seed it. It
And that
kind of
must be one of
starts
the
to
greatest
seed
rewards,
itself.
is once you get it to that point.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So that's what I do on all the plant seeds.
So basically, you've gone from corporate to entrepreneurship to now gardening.
Absolutely, and cheerleading.
Yeah, I love it. So I guess to close this off, Tracey, thank you for sharing your story. Thank you for again being open and sharing some of your personal wisdom and philosophy with us. What does the next 6 to 12 months look like for you and for TCB?
Yeah, a number of our projects, certainly our Remake program and our Grow ECD programs, are in the growth phases. So we see lots of opportunity to expand those programs. And we are really also about taking what we've learned as an organization, some many hard lessons, particularly on the people development component with the participants that we work with, and see so many other organizations going through those lessons that we've already learned. And so now that's where our training company has come in. How do we take the programs that we've learned and developed and have proven are successful and spread our impact through others? Give these products to other organizations, give these products to corporates, so that those individuals that are getting on the first rung of the employment ladder are given the same inputs so that they can find their own belief systems and so that they can be successful in their lives. And so that's our next big wave, is really we've scaled deep with our current models, and now we're really scaling out to spread some of these models through others, not necessarily doing it all themselves.
That's amazing. I think what you've been able to learn just from a learning perspective, excuse the double meaning there, but genuinely in terms of helping other people learn skills, specifically the shifting of mindset, paradigm, belief system of what's possible, is so valuable in absolutely any environment. And I think that's one thing I'm most excited for. Is I love what you've been able to do with your organization. I think that is a true scaling of wisdom, and that I'm looking forward to seeing getting out to the country and seeing how you're white labeling what you've learned works will do so much good. So thank you for doing what you've done, Tracey. Thank you for continuing to do it, and thank you for now sharing it with the rest of the world. And thank you for being on the Founder Files. Just the final question that I have for you is, what's the one question that I haven't asked you that I should have asked you that you'd like to answer now?
Goodness, I don't know. Maybe the question is, would I do it again? Would I jump off that corporate ladder again? Absolutely. I mean, absolutely. And, I think, what I would say to anybody, if you've got a niggle, if there's a deep niggle inside you and it's a repeated pattern, listen to that voice, and don't trust your intuition. I think so often we think too much with our head and we don't think enough with our heart. And we actually, if there's something inside of you that needs to be explored, be courageous and go and explore it. I didn't want to go. I was, all in my head, and going on that vulnerability path, asking, what is the meaning of life? Should I be pursuing another path? Not buying into the stereotypes. It's a worthwhile journey. It's a painful journey, but it really is a worthwhile journey. And I'm very grateful that I had the courage to do it and found the right people to support me on that path. There are great people out there who can help guide you. Keep asking you to ask yourself those questions. And even if you don't think you're an entrepreneur, I believe that there is an entrepreneur inside of us that is a creative spirit that, if we give it time, it can flourish. So yes, I would do it all again. It's not an easier path. I think that's the other thing. A lot of people said, "Oh, it looks, fantastic." It's not an easy path, but it's a worthwhile path.
But that's the nature of fulfillment, right? Is it's if it was easy, it wouldn't be worth it. And I think that the nature of it being hard is what makes it more rewarding. Tracey, thank you for being on the show. I can't wait to see the next 15 years of what you're able to do with TCB.
Super. Thanks, Cameron. Thanks for the opportunity.
I said it many times during this podcast, but the reason why I resonate so much with Tracey's story is because I resonate deeply with what she's doing. What we care about at the end of the day is building great sustainable businesses. And I love it when I get to chat to people that are as motivated about entrepreneurship as I am. And for you, as a listener to this, you're obviously listening to this, and especially this deep into the episode, because you care about entrepreneurship too. Now, the whole reason MetaVolve exists is to ensure that as many entrepreneurs as possible can take a holiday where they actually switch off whilst their business keeps growing. And what that comes down to at the end of the day is entrepreneurs really have a lot of grit. They're able to learn really well and apply those learnings and problem solve their way through a lot of problems. But you get to a certain point where you really just need to download your thinking from your head into your team and make sure that you can trust people to take care of this organization that is part of your identity. And that's what we help you do. We help you download this thinking from your head, structure it in a way that other people can understand and then make sense. That not only allows you to focus, but also allows you to be able to build out the business so it can be sustainable, so you can focus on the growth paths that you want to. And we've been successful in doing this. We've worked with over 100 clients across now 17 countries, over 20 different industries. And the results we've gotten have been up to 400% revenue growth within a year, 82% net profit growth. And my favorite stat, obviously it's our mission, is the most unplugged holiday days out of any year of them being entrepreneurs. So this is us living our mission. If this is something that you're curious about, would like to find out more, besides the strategy development programs that we do, which are amazing, because we get the results that I just mentioned, but they're not for everyone, right? So what we do is just a 90-minute breakthrough session with you and your team to figure out how we're going to just break through the next 3 to 6 months, move this business forward and break through some thinkings around your opportunities, your challenges, and just that's the promise. How can we help make a breakthrough in your thinking? And so if you would like to hop on this curiosity call with me, then please follow the link in the description below to get to MetaVolve's website, and you'll see the prompt and the call to action right there where you're able to book in that session. And let's have a chat. We'd love to meet you. We'd love to hear from you. We'd love to chat with more people that listen to the podcast. And yeah, if you want to chat more about what it takes to build a great sustainable business, you know where to find me. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for listening to the full episode of The Founder Files. I will see you next time. Cheers.